Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for that welcome. Now we've got options here. First of all, I can do the ecology of Lent, not a problem. But if you give me a little bit of money, I can tell you stories about Father Mark going right back that I'm sure you would love to hear. So any offers? I better not. I better do the ecology of Lent because that's actually what I'm here for. It's just a bit intimidating. I'm glad you put it on speaker view because up until then it was like the Muppets, you know, sort of all those little squares and everything. And I thought, oh my goodness, having to talk to all these people. I live in Wales. I am Welsh, as been pointed out, which for nature and ecology and the rest of it, it's a beautiful place to live. But just before we get into things, just to say this is not an academic talk. Okay, so it's just a reflection, personal reflection of my thoughts of the natural world, but also how that awareness and that deep connection that I've got with creation has a profound influence on my relationship with God and my spirituality. They're very integrated. And you think Father Mark is bad as regards with the birds and the butterflies and all the rest of it. I went, I think it was the third one I did, we actually went on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And I think about the third day in, because I got everybody, because I mean, there was birds I hadn't seen there, and of course there was great tourist business. And on the third day in, one of the parishioners turned to me and said, "You going to talk about Jesus any time during this trip, or is it all just going to be about the birds we've seen?" And I thought, "Oh, okay." Perhaps it's not as a spiritual exercise for them as it was for me. Anyway, so why ecology? Well, you may know that ecology, according to some of the definitions, is the study of relationships between living organisms, including humans and their physical environment. And this sort of study also seeks to understand the vital connection between plants and animals and the world around them. Now, as a Christian, I put that in terms of our relationship with creation and therefore the creator, God. So that's how I think of ecology. It's got much more of a dimension to it than just a scientific study. For me, it's actually that relationship that I've got with my creator. And I've always had a great love and connection to the natural world. And I've been very lucky because I've been able to experience and touch and see the divine through the wonders of creation. And for me, that's a great gift that I've been given. My connection to God through his creation, it just means that I feel God's touch more powerfully when, for instance, I'm sitting on the shore watching a sunset, or gazing up into a black night sky, you know, jeweled with all these countless stars, or being still in a wood and listening to birds calling to one another through the foliage. And I felt that closeness to God, that deep experience of the divine, actually more there than when I'm in a cathedral, sorry to say. Although I like being in cathedrals and I do get something out of being in cathedrals, and there is a sense of the sacred there too, but for me, the deep feeling is that connection to nature. So my sacred spaces are really scattered through nature. And once I was in South Africa, I was in the bush, and I'd been there a few weeks, and I missed sort of celebrating the Eucharist. And as parish priest, as you know, sort of the structure is that you're supposed to be celebrating the Eucharist for your parish every Sunday. So I thought I need to celebrate, but I didn't really have a congregation. The first couple of weeks was okay, but this day I know I really sort of missed sort of being at the Eucharist because I was miles from anywhere. And I remember sort of setting everything out because I had what we used to call sort of Wendy church, you know, the little more portable mass kit. And I went out and I sat by this tree and I had this view across the river and everything. And I sat by this tree and I put everything out. And then all of a sudden, these buffaloes started coming, but thankfully they're on the other side of the river. And then these baboons started showing up, and they were all sort of calling to each other on the other, thankfully on the other side of the river. So I had all this sort of going on, and then it just went quiet when I started celebrating the mass. It was great. So I went back to the parish and I explained to them, it was a beautiful experience, whatever. And I didn't think I had a congregation, but then sort of the creation turned up, to celebrate mass with me. But then I made the mistake of telling them, and all I had for the congregation were baboons and buffaloes. So no change there then. I got it in the neck for that afterwards. But anyway, the sacred, the divine is definitely something that touches me. Now, there's a picture here, and I want to share the screen that I've got, and I'm not sure if this will work or not. So hold on a minute. One moment, caller. It's just a picture that I wanted to share. Yeah. Can you see that picture? Should I put the picture? There we are. Marvelous. Now, the picture that I've just shared, how do I then get that to be smaller for me? You got the picture. You can all see that. Nod your heads if you can. Marvelous. Thank you very much indeed. That's a picture of a wood, which is not that far from me. Coed Nant Gwerno, which is the wood of the stream of the alder trees. And I was going to put that picture up while I sort of read something to you. But because I'm now sharing my screen, I can see nothing on my computer, so I'm going to go back to my notes. But it's just, I wanted to show you that picture because it is actually quite spectacular. So let me just go back to stop sharing a minute. I'm going to do something which I probably should have done before. There we are. I didn't realize that it did that. There we are, marvelous. So this is a poem, sort of, because I talked about the feeling of, sort of the sacredness and everything, being in a wood, and others have felt it as well. And there's a poem that I want to read out to you. It's called Feren y Llwyd in Welsh. It's a translation in English. It's called The Woodland Mass. I think, Mark, I've sent it to you before. I've mentioned it before. It's one of my favorite poems, and it's actually by a poem called Dafydd ap Gwilym, and it's a mid-14th century poem. Hold on a minute. And I can actually read it out to you now while I'm sharing that screen. There we are. Now you've got the picture. The Woodland Mass by Dafydd ap Gwilym. I was in a pleasant place today, under the mantles of fine green hazels, listening at break of day to the skillful cockthrush, singing a splendid stanza, signs and shining recitals. A traveller from afar, like Pwyll, his nature, this grey love messenger journeyed far. He came here from the fair country of Caer, because my lovely darling asked him. Loquacious, until a warrant is obtained, he is making for the head of a valley. He wore an alb of the flowers of May's tender branches, and his chasuble, so it seemed, was of the wind's wings, green mantles. The altar's covering there, by great God, was of nothing but gold entirely. It was Morfudd who had sent this metrical singing of May's foster son. I heard in pure language a lengthy recitation without fault, a reading to the people of the parish, no pompous stumbling, of the gospel without mumbling. Then there was raised on an ash tree hill a wafer bread of a good leaf, with a fine, slender, resonant nightingale from the edge of a grove nearby, poetess of the stream, ringing for all the Sanctus bell, a piercing whistle, and the host was raised up towards the sky above the grove, and God our Father was worshipped with a chalice of desire and love. I am content with the music. It was nurtured by the birch grove in the sweet woods. So that was one of my favorite poems called The Woodland Mass. And again, it's that sort of sense of someone seeing that creation and being touched by God's presence there. And I mentioned before sort of about ecology. I am actually an ecologist by training. It's one of the things that I actually trained to do. An ecologist, who does surveys and studies the natural world and all that sort of side of things. So I'm an ecologist as well as a priest, and each role feeds the other. So in my role as a priest, I'm spiritually nourished by God's creation. And in my role as ecologist, I seek a greater understanding of that creation in order to care for it and protect it. So when I walk in the woods, I feel a great sense of peace and oneness with nature. When you go into a woods, I don't know if you've felt this at all, but when you enter woods or trees, there's like an interconnecting energy field. And research has actually shown that visiting forest and woods has real quantifiable health benefits, both mental and physical. Even 5 minutes around trees or green spaces can improve your health. And numerous studies around the world are exploring the health benefits of spending time outside in nature, green spaces and specifically forests. And at the moment, I'm sort of into things Japanese. You can ask me that later. But in 1982, the Japanese Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries coined a term for it. And it's called Shinrin-yoku in Japanese. And it means taking in the forest atmosphere or forest bathing. I don't know if you've ever come across that term before. It's a lovely term. But it's actually being in a forest, in a wood, and just experience that atmosphere, just being there and being amongst the trees. And they encourage people to visit forests to relieve stress and improve health. And those researchers have also found the balanced flow of energy, that it's deeply healing. And for me, it's a natural connection. It's part of the natural connection to God, the creator. And whether we are conscious of it or not, we receive it, because God's gifts are for everybody. It says in the Bible, rain falls on good and bad alike. Well, when you go into a forest, you get the benefits whether you acknowledge God or not. But when you are conscious of that connection to God, it can aid emotional and spiritual healing. It actually sort of speaks to on a different level, more deeper level, I think. So the more we understand our world and the more aware we are of intensely rhythmic, the interlinking patterns of life, the more we understand, the more we're aware of that. God made the world where everything is connected, and that includes us. Because so often in the past, we've seen ourselves as, we are the pinnacle of God's creation. We are the best. And everything else is sort of abused or looked down on or dismissed or just there for our use. And that's been the mantra right up until modern day. And people still have that mantra now, it's there for our use. And the creatures we share the planet with are seen as lesser beings instead of cohabitants and expressions of God's creative love. So there's a little sort of thing here, I'm going to give you some names, okay? Some names of creatures. And after each name, I'm going to ask you to type in the chat box if you think it's a bird or an animal or a fish, and no Googling it, all right? No cheating, because nobody can see if you're doing that or not, but I'll know. So, right, so I'm gonna, it's after each one, I want you to just to type in if it's a fish or an animal or a bird, okay? Are you all ready? So the first one I'm going to give you is a Utah Lake sculpin. What is it? A bird, an animal, or a fish? Oh, you got quite a few. Oh, there's a few bits and pieces. Lots of people actually getting that one right. There's a few, and there's one is, I don't care. All right then. Oh, I think a few people are Googling it. Anyway, right. The next one you've got is a Lord Howe's white eye. I don't think it's anything he suffered from. Is it a fish or a bird or an animal? Oh, lots of people know this. I'm impressed. Oh, well done. Okay, then the next one. A salado shiner. I'm not making these up, honestly. I'm really not. Is it a bird, an animal, or a fish? A salado shiner. Wow, okay, right. What about a black mammal? Mammal, M-A-M-O, black mammal. Bird, animal, or fish? Oh, quite a mixture of this, but this is confusing people. Oh, right, okay, that's interesting. Right. Oh, now I've got to try and pronounce this now. Bagangang, a bagangang. Animal, bird, or fish? Okay. Right. A thick-tailed chub. I think that's an easy one, a thick-tailed chub. Yeah, most people have got that, I think. This one you should get. Thylacine. Animal, bird, or fish? A thylacine. There's a few people shaking their heads there. Thylacine. Okay. Father Mark, you should be ashamed of yourself. Right. Oahu akepa. Oahu akepa. Bird, animal, or fish? It's not easy, is it? Okay, last one. A lesser bilby. Lesser bilby. Oh, I thought people would get this. Okay. There's a lot of wrong answers. Right. Bonus question. What have they all got in common? I know you're supposed to guess at everything, Carol, I can imagine. So what are all these creatures got in common? Okay, we have God's creatures, African, God's creatures, endangered, Okay, I'll put you out your misery. There's a couple of them who got it right. There's a couple of them who got it right. So, okay, it makes it easier if you can actually see these. Right, so how do we do this? Technically minded. There we are. Right, you should all be able to see my screen now. Okay, marvelous. So, these are all the creatures. And you can mark yourselves if you got them right or wrong. That's the first one. A Utah lake sculpin is a fish that became extinct in the 1930s. Decreased water quality from agricultural practices. Utah, USA. So we've lost that one. Lord Howe's white-eye. I couldn't get a good picture of this at all. There are a few other white-eyes, but not this one. But it became extinct in 1923, predated by introduced rats to Lord Howe Island in Australia. A salado shiner is a fish. Very few got that right. Only became extinct in 1992. Habitat loss and degradation, again caused by people. Mexico. Black mammal bird became extinct in 1907 through human predation and habitat destruction on Molokai, Hawaii. Bangangang, the fish, became extinct in 1975, which introduced predatory species, over-harvesting and destructive fishing methods in the Philippines. Destructive fishing methods, one of the ways to get fishing, rather than fishing for them all and using nets and everything, a couple of sticks of dynamite in, it blows everything up, and all the fish that float to the surface, you skim them all off. Lovely. Thick-tailed chub fish, extinct 1957. Habitat destroyed by the drainage of sloughs and oops, sorry. I'm going on all sorts here. Where are we? That's it. Sort of dam building, water diversion, irrigation. That was California, USA. The thylacine is an animal. Became extinct in 1936. This picture was taken of the last two in a zoo. Persecuted by humans in Tasmania. Also called the Tasmanian tiger as well. You might have heard of that. Thylacine. It was a marsupial. He was just shocked because they just thought he was going to go after the sheep, so sheep were more important. Oahu kepa is a bird, extinct in the 1930s. Habitat destruction again, introduced disease from Hawaii. And the lesser bilby, an animal, extinct 1950s, from introductions of foreign predators like the domestic cats and the fox in Australia. So that's, so the ones who said that they're all extinct were right. Yes, they are funny names. I mean, that's the reason why I chose them, because if it was anything ordinary, you would have guessed them straight away. You won't find any of them on Earth. And that's a result of actions of people which directly cause or contributed to their demise. We've got a job to do. We've got to look after our Earth and the creatures on it. The second Genesis story, sort of Genesis chapter 2. And in verse 7, it actually reminds us that we come from Earth. And Pope Francis actually says in Laudate Si, we have forgotten that we ourselves are dust of the earth. Our very bodies are made up of her elements. We breathe her air and we receive life and refreshment from her waters. The Hebrew meaning of Adam means earth. That's what it means. It's not somebody's name. Adam means earth. And as I said before, we think we're like the pinnacle of the creation of this business, and many of us grew up with this sort of, I don't know, dualistic thought pattern. That made it easy to think that humans are separate and better than the rest of God's creation. But we're becoming more aware that we, with our distinct abilities and responsibilities, are actually family. We're part of the rest of creation. We're not separate. So what's this got to do with Lent then? Good question. Well, I said at the beginning it was a personal reflection of what Lent for me means for me, not a theological treatise at all. And Lent and spring for me have always gone hand in hand. I mean, I grew up in the Western Hemisphere, so that's what happens. It's at that time, isn't it? The lengthening days, the increasing warm spells, that mark the days. And even the word Lent is a shortened form of the Old English word, Lenten, which means the spring season. And it's related to the word lengthen. It's referring to the lengthening of the days at this time, so the way that the days go. I like the fact that the days lengthen, and I like the way that it sort of gradually draws you into summer, so you go through that sort of springtime and it's going from the dark days of winter and it's gradually growing. I think that's totally spoiled when we have to put the clocks forward. Because when I get up, so I get quite early and it's nice in the sort of sunny place. And then, sort of dawn is just coming. And now next week, we go in an hour forward. That means I'm in the dark again, and it's been getting gradually light, and I've got to start all over again. So I don't like it, but that's just me. So this period of Lent, this period of preparation for Easter, as I say, takes place in the Western world in spring. So for me, this time of the year is all about new growth and new life and new beginnings. Nature is gearing itself up, for this explosion of abundance, so we got flowers and insects and baby birds and, sorry, Father Mark, even baby spiders. And we see it, sort of in the first tentative buds, pushing their way out of the ground, like snowdrops and daffodils and the lesser celandine that's coming up. And then, the unfurling of the buds then on the willows and the sallows, to give us the catkins and the lambstails. And birds are singing more. They're establishing new territories to provision their young, and attract mates. There's a lot going on. And they're in their full voice. And somebody watches birds. I love that. And there's the new ones are coming back, the ones who are wintered elsewhere. Now that the days are getting warmer, they're starting to come in. And some of the early starters, like ravens and blackbirds and tawny owls and robins are already nesting. They've already started. So Lent and spring intimately bound, not just because they happen to occur together, but because, for me, Lent as well is preparing for new life, for a new start, new beginnings. It's a gradual time that leads us to the day of resurrection. I spoke about sort of the days lengthening, and that gradual movement towards the spring, the summer. We move from spring into the summer. And that's wonderful explosion of life that takes place, and then all of a sudden you're in May and you think, gosh, what's around you. And Lent is like that. It's a gradual time. We have this. It's a lengthy time. Some people think, why is Lent so long? Those are the people who've given up chocolate and they're desperate. But it's this gradual time that leads us to the day of resurrection, when new life bursts forth, and there's this feeling of anticipation. That I always had as a child. There's anticipation, sort of like the spring, the birds and the flowers and all that, and that leaving behind that sort of wintry feeling. But also, sort of it's that expectation of the celebration of Easter. And it wasn't about eggs, believe me, it wasn't about chocolate eggs, lovely as they were. I didn't grow up in a family where we had eggs coming up, we had one egg and that was it at Easter. That was it. So, it wasn't about it, but all the liturgies I remember as a child, sort of growing up, going to the Triduum, to the Maundy Thursday, so the washing of the feet and the veneration of the cross on Good Friday and the movement, so it was very well done. I was very lucky; it was well done in the parish that I grew up in, and the bonfire on the vigil, and as young as we were, we all went to it. We went to all of it, And there was something beautiful about the way that that drama unfolded as well. It was all part and parcel of that time for me. So that's why for me it's a wonderful time, and it's a very different feeling to Christmas. Christmas, I always associate sort of, it's a lovely time when the birth of Christ in this business, but it's more to do with nostalgia for me when I think of Christmas. When with Easter and Lenten going into Easter, I just think of, it's exciting, it's movement, it's dramatic, it's something which speaks to me now. I'm not looking back, I'm looking forward. That's what it means to me. So, and as an ecologist, well, I watch the plants grow, coming slowly to life, after the cold, short days of winter, and, seeing the number of insects increasing in the gardens. They busy themselves finding their food after a long sleep. And so even, I'm very lucky really, because where I live, in the attic in Portland, we've got a rather large attic. We've got a maternity roost of lesser horseshoe bats. There's 155 of them at the moment. Well, they'll be coming back now. They start returning now because they don't hibernate here. They go, and then all the females will come back then to have their babies. And you can stand outside on a summer evening, and you can just see them come out. It's a bit like a Scooby-Doo cartoon, that beginning of the Scooby-Doo cartoon when all the bats come out. And you're just watching them coming out. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I know some people will, but I love it. It's great. So that's starting to happen now. Just starting to see the bats sort of around the house again, and you say, oh, bats coming back. The weeks, sort of winter sun has become stronger each day, over time. So, birds and flowers and bulbs and lengthened days, and knowing that the warmth and the sunlight of summer are approaching, and the winter temperature, is gone. But also I find people are more optimistic and cheerful. Now I know with COVID, none of us are particularly optimistic at the moment, but even so, sort of it does lift people's moods, sort of that lengthening of days and more sunlight. So it's time to throw off the restraints of winter and to search for what we want, to make plans to journey forward, to take risks. And we embrace the energy on our journey to become whole. So Lent is a part of the Earth's cycle of celebration. I mean, that's why I like about the liturgy, because it is part of the cycle of creation as well. We follow the cycles, and it comes from, sort of the Jewish, sort of faith, the same. When you have the different festivals which mark the different times in the year, which were very linked to creation and the earth, and even Easter, sort of, it's to do with, when we celebrate, it's to do with the full moon, and so it's just all linked. So as we go through Lent as well, with that gradual thing, you have a change in the liturgy, the way the readings of the Psalms urge us to ready ourselves for what's to come. Placing emphasis on the spiritual spring clean that we need to do. Sorting out the habits that stay, the ones that foster the love of God and the building up of the kingdom of love, and then those that need to be discarded, get rid of, those are the opposite, that foster self-centeredness and discord and apathy. And in looking at Lent and nature, they complement each other. The cycles and seasons teach us about God's provision and abundance for us. So it's no surprise for me that the seasons heavily influence our liturgy, and our feelings are bound up in the experience of this. There's lots of symbols around at this time, isn't there, as well? Sort of, but some of them have been, sort of come from pagan origins and been Christianized, as a lot of them are. But like, for instance, rabbits or hare. It was a hare originally, but the Bible makes no mention of a long-eared, short-haired creature who delivers decorated eggs to well-behaved children on Easter Sunday. Not a one, not a mention. But the Easter Bunny has become quite a prominent symbol of Christianity's most important holiday. Because the thing is, the origins of it are unclear, but rabbits and hares are known to be prolific procreators. So they were an ancient symbol of fertility and new life. So, apparently it's the German immigrants who first arrived in America, I think in the 1700s, that, sort of had this, because they had this tradition of an egg-laying hare or rabbit called Osterhauser. Mark, you do German. Osterhase. Anyway, sort of and the children used to make nests so this creature could lay its coloured eggs in it. Anyway, I don't know where we thought it laid eggs, but there we are. And then the custom spread, throughout America, and then this rabbit then sort of started delivered, chocolate and other types of gifts and decorated baskets, and then we ended up with the traditions sort of over here. And they also left carrots there in case the rabbit got sort of hungry from hopping all around and everything. So that's one of the symbols. The other symbol then is an egg, which again is an ancient symbol of fertility and life. And from a Christian perspective, we think Easter eggs, it's said to represent Jesus' emergence from the tomb and the resurrection. But decorating eggs is a tradition that goes back, at least to the 13th century for Easter. But and in some places they still do it now. I know sort of in the Orthodox Church or the Greek churches, they boil the boiled eggs, they colour them, and then on Easter Sunday, then the kids then, it's like playing conkers. You try to crack your opponent's shell without yours cracking as well. It's one of the traditions. Well, that's something you could start. So there's a lot of sort of symbols like hares and eggs, whatever, that come from pagan festivals, sort of in spring festivals. But for me, I mean, sort of a symbol it's because all things are created, because a Christian, all things are created by God. I can easily see God's work in anything that people call secular or pagan. But God made that, so it's just an echo for me of a recognition of God's power. They may not call it that, but it's a recognition of God's power and love, even if they don't realize that. It's a feeling of awe that people get when experiencing the natural world in some form, because we are created beings, and we naturally move towards God. No matter what faith, religion, denomination, whatever like that, we are naturally moving towards God. So nature being part of that, and we being part of nature, I see that movement time and time again. So Lent is a new beginning, a new opportunity, a new journey, a physical, spiritual journey. It's a time to prepare for changes, because change is not easy. But if we really want to be sort of committed to following Christ, then change has to happen. Otherwise, we just get comfortable in our own ways, in the ways we do things. Oh, well, I'm quite comfortable. I don't need to change anything. Really? So you don't need to improve. So you're perfect as you are. I don't think so. So we need to prepare ourselves spiritually. We need to leave our old patterns of behaviors, our ways of thinking that are not helpful. We need to leave those behind, because they can hold us back. They can stop us from moving forward. Make way for the new to come in. And sometimes it is difficult to do that. The loss of the familiar, even those things which are harmful, can prove to be difficult to deal with, difficult to say, well, I don't really want to do that anymore. But Lent is a time to especially invite God's Spirit in, to give us that strength and vitality, to learn to trust all that will be well. And sort of Julian of Norwich, which I have great devotion to, Julian of Norwich, all shall be well, all manner of things shall be well. That was her mantra. It will be well, and not to fear change, because Lent means change. We are looking at ourselves, and looking at the way we are being disciples of Christ, and what needs to change to make that better. So it means change. So with the Spirit's help, we can take up this period of Lent, sort of these challenges in the penitential season. Oh, by the way, penitential season does not mean miserable. You don't go around like a wet weekend. I think they made that clear in the first reading, in the Gospel in Ash Wednesday. Don't be putting on sackcloth. God's not interested. Miserable sinners, don't cut that. We need to face things. We need to be joyful sinners, but we also need to face things that perhaps we've previously avoided. So for me, you see, sort of it leads up to the celebration of love, which is Easter for me. It's the love of God for his creation, shown in the sacrifice of Christ on the cross and the giving of new life. And to rejoice fully in his act of love at Easter, then we have to open our hearts in Lent to spiritual growth. and we have to open them to live. You know, and doing that then helps us to reciprocate God's love. You know, sort of we express it then to those around us, helping us to be compassionate, understanding our pain as well as the pain of others. You know, let it be empathetic, letting go of fear, transform to be open. We give ourselves freely and openly, and when we do that, our hearts then are able to receive more. We value and celebrate all we have in life. So it's that link to spring, you see, for me. You know, nature undergoes regeneration, and we also do that. We renew our commitment to Christ in Easter baptism promises, and that renewal and healing are an important process, both in nature and in Christianity and in us. Healing ourselves is a place of departure for seeing where we can then help healing in others. We're asked to preach a gospel of life. How many Christians, you know, are miserable? I used to say to people sort of coming to the church, when you leave here, please have a smile on your face, because otherwise people, when they see you coming out today, I want them to look at you coming out and smiling and laughing, thinking, oh, I wonder what they're doing there. I might go and have a join. If you're going out looking like somebody slapped you across the face, who's going to come in? Who'd want to? So we preach a gospel of life, a gospel of love, a gospel of joy. But we also do that in response to the destruction of the entire ecosystems and the extinction of enormous amount of creatures that's happening. I mean, I'm sorry to give you all those sort of, you know, lovely creatures, and then to say, by the way, they're all extinct. It was almost a bit like sort of, you know, the Oscars. We'd having sort of all these wonderful, all this film and whatever. And now we're going to turn to all the people we've lost this year, and oh, miserable. You say, oh, I didn't know they died, you know, and you're going through all that list. It was a bit like that, really. So, as Christians, I say, we need to proclaim the good news that Jesus, the risen Jesus, fulfills and renews all creation. And to recognize our planet as filled with God's vibrant presence and challenge. The destructive behaviors that we do, we need to challenge that. Our faith and theology can't just be solely confined to our relationship, my relationship with God, God and other human beings. That's it. It's got to be all of creation. You know, this is our extended family. We are stewards of creation, and we have a solidarity with them, with that. It just makes common sense, because it's our home too, to take care of that. And I know many churches at the moment are beginning to see sort of strong connection between the season of Lent and care of the natural world. Because I know people give up chocolate and alcohol and Facebook sometimes, you know, during periods of Lent. But some churches then encouraging parishioners to give up plastics, or to encourage litter picks, or to reflect on our ordinary ways of living and become disruptive to God's creation, or just making changes in our own life to help with that. See, when I was growing up, we were encouraged to use Lent as a time to examine our behaviour, you know, the things that cause us harm, but also then cause harm to others. But now that we have a better and more balanced understanding of our relationship with our Creator and with His creation, we should really then consider, well, what harm does our behaviour do to the earth and the creatures that we share it with? So those are just a few of my thoughts on creation and Lent. I talked to you today. I'm sorry about that. And also for me, how they're interesting, you know, they're I can't pronounce that word, intrinsically linked. Because of my upbringing, my dad loved animals, so he, you know, sort of parted that to me. Where I was raised, Wales, you know, sort of beautiful sort of scenery in the Western Hemisphere, where spring happens, but also because of my curious nature. All right, you can take that both ways. What I mean is not my, well, I have got a curious nature, but my, I want to know things. I want to know, well, why is that called that? Well, what's that about? What's that? So that's just led me to sort of find out more about the natural world. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions or anything. I don't know. Then you can always type them in. Oh, Eunice said, sort of, I love bat houses, better than insect spray by far. They eat a lot of insects. They are brilliant. Mosquitoes, there's thousands of them. One pipistrelle bat can eat about, I think, about 3,000 mosquitoes a night. Surely they're worth their weight in gold. So does anybody want to say anything, or what happens now, Mark?
Oh, I've just removed the spotlight from you. You're okay now. And
Good.
so what I'll do is I'll open it back to gallery view actually now. And what I have to say is Sarah did tell me. Oh, I'll put myself on video now. Sarah did tell me to do the what was it I was doing? The spotlight, which I did, but she didn't tell me that I also needed to put full screen. So that took me about 25 minutes to realize that I had to do that. So there are still 5 people at the top all the way through. But you're all looking very intelligent and interested, so that was okay. It was only after a while that I realized I was supposed to press full screen. See, Sarah needs to tell me everything. You know, I need to be told everything to keep on track with the 21st century, and she didn't. So there we are. So I should blame her, even though it's not her fault. But anyway, so you know, for the 10th talk, when Karen speaks to us on Wednesday, I'll get it perfectly right the first time, just as we're finishing. Anyway, Auntie, that was brilliant. Thank you. Laura wants to say something, please.